Hello, I'm the Progressive Disciple, and I am taking a journey through the Bible, and I'm inviting you to join me. Today, we are covering Ecclesiastes Chapters 5 through 8. So let's begin. In Ecclesiastes 5, verse 1, it says, "Guard your steps when you go into the house of God. Go near to listen rather than to offer sacrifices of fools who do not know that they do wrong." The reason why this speaks to me is that I enjoy fellowship of church. I enjoy singing in the choir. But sometimes I have a habit of not paying too much attention during the worship service. This, I feel, is calling me to listen more. I think this would help me get more out of the worship service. In Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 10, it says, "Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless." And in Ecclesiastes chapter 6, verses 3 through 6, it says, "A man may have 100 children and live many years, yet no matter how long he lives, if he cannot enjoy his prosperity and does not receive proper burial, I say a stillborn child is better off than he. It comes without meaning, it departs in darkness, and in darkness its name is shrouded. Though it never saw the sun or knew anything, it has more rest than does that man. Even if he lives 1,000 years twice over, but fails to enjoy his prosperity, do not all go to the same place?" Money, do we have enough of it? And should I feel bad that I have saved for retirement instead of just enjoying it? One thing, I don't really love money. I think he's right. If you just save money for money's sake, you'll never have enough. But I do like having money as security. It makes me feel safe in the time to come. Susie Orman said, "A big part of financial freedom is having your heart and mind free from worry about the what-ifs of life." And so even if it says, enjoy your prosperity, I think that also includes you feeling safe for the times to come. Ecclesiastes 7 is different from the rest of the book that I have read so far. It's a wisdom chapter, and it's very much like the book of Proverbs. Here are a few verses that caught my eye. In Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 2, it says, "It is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting. For death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take this to heart." My mother one time had a friend, and she had complained that she did not like to go to funerals. Her mother said, "Well, that's where you and I differ. I just love going and seeing the family all torn up." Obviously, she was being sarcastic, but I do think it is important to give support to your friends, because I know death is going to visit my family, and I will need their help in time to come. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 10 says, "Do not say, 'Why were the old days better than these?' For it's not wise to ask such questions." I found this amusing because we are always seem to be talking about the good old days. I remember Mom saying that it's a pity that we lived in the suburbs and didn't have an alley. She one time told the story of the kids from the other alley announcing that they were going to walk down their alley. Everyone got their snowballs ready, and the kids from the other alley walked down with their trash can lids and their buckets full of snowballs. They walked halfway down the alley, and all of a sudden the other kids sworn out from the sides of the buildings to stop them. They had a snowball fight. What the kids from the other alley did not realize is that they had stationed other kids on top of the houses. So not only did they get bombarded with snowballs from in front of them, but they got bombarded with snowballs on top. My mom had great memories of when she was a child, but I don't really think you can consider the Great Depression the best of times. In Ecclesiastes Chapter 7, verses 15 through 18, it says, "In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these. The righteous perish in their righteousness, and the wicked living long in their wickedness. Do not be over-righteous, neither be over-wise. Why destroy yourself? Do not be over-wicked, and do not be a fool. Why die before your time? It is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes." This matches what I had said in my last video when I talked about achieving a balance in life to try to make a life that is meaningful. But still, I wonder, what does it mean to have the right amount of wickedness? If you know, please leave a comment in the comment section below. In Ecclesiastes Chapter 7, verses 21 and 22, it says, "Do not pay attention to every word people say, or you may hear your servant cursing you. For you know in your heart that many times you have cursed others." I have to take this to heart. Sometimes I have the bad habit of talking about people. And people have talked about me. One woman in church confessed to me that she one time was talking about me. At the time, I ran the screen at church. I also sang in the choir. The two kind of conflicted at times. We would start off the service with the opening hymn, and the choir would process down the center of the aisle. I, of course, could not be a part of this because I was running the screen and was switching the screen for every verse of the song. At the end of the song, the choir lined up at the front of the sanctuary to sing their anthem. I, of course, switched the slide to the slide announcing what song the choir was singing. I then slipped down the side of the church to join the choir. One woman turned around and said to her husband, "Why is that man always late?" Her husband pointed out, "He's the one running the screen." We laughed about this later, but if somebody says something that I hear from another source, what I need to do is to take that in stride and to know that I too have talked about other people. This next verse that caught my mind really made me angry. Let me read this to you. This is Ecclesiastes Chapter 7, verses 27 through 29. "Look," said the teacher, "this is what I have discovered. Adding one thing to another to discover the schemes of things. While I was searching, but not finding, I found one upright man among 1,000, but not one upright woman among them all. This only have I found. God created mankind upright, but they have gone in search of many schemes." I saw this and I thought, really? You have known many women. You had about 700 wives and 300 concubines. You're telling me that not one of them was upright? I started getting really angry, and I thought, this says more about Solomon than what it says about women. And then I asked the question I try to ask myself throughout my Bible study. What does this have to say about me? Well, let me go on about this. Solomon was a man of his time. In his time, women were property. Today, people don't collect women in harems of 700 or 300 concubines. I mean, how much time do you have? Is that like 15 days per woman? Obviously, he did not think of women as human beings. I, too, am a man of my time. I grew up in the 60s and the 70s. Back in my time, we told racist jokes. We told sexist jokes. While I was growing up, I was one of those little nerdy kids that people like to pick on. And the biggest put down that anyone has ever made is to say, "You're gay." I have learned that being gay was a bad thing. And I learned to be insensitive in matters of race and sex. I have hence been trying to get over these things, knowing that a lot of the attitudes that we've learned in the 60s and 70s have led to systemic racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia. This is my sin. Solomon obviously suffered from the same sin, at least in regards to sexism. I have been trying to improve myself. Some of the books that I have read were White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo and Straight White Men by Chris Furr. I am learning to put away my white privilege and do what I can to help society get over the systemic racism that plagues our land. In Ecclesiastes Chapters 8, verses 2 through 6, it says, "Obey the king's command. I say because you took an oath before God. Do not be in a hurry to leave the king's presence. Do not stand up for a bad cause, for he will do whatever he pleases. Since the king's word is supreme, you cannot say to him, 'What are you doing?' Whoever obeys his commands will come to no harm, and the wise heart will know the proper time and procedure. For there is a proper time and procedure for every matter, though a person may be weighed down by misery." My first feelings in reading this verse was to be grateful that I live in a democracy and not an autocracy. But going on, in Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verses 11 through 13, it says, "When a sentence for a crime is not quickly carried out, people's hearts are filled with schemes to do wrong. Although a wicked person who commits 100 crimes may live a long time, I know that it will go better for those who fear God, who are reverent before him. Yet because the wicked do not fear God, it will not go well with them, and their days will not lengthen like a shadow." I was thinking of these two sets of verses, and one thing that came to me was that of civil disobedience. The Bible actually has some examples of civil disobedience. The book of Daniel, the King Darius ordered that he be worshipped for a whole month, and yet Daniel continued to worship God openly where people could see him. For his defiance, the king threw him into the lion's den. So when is it right to disobey the law in an act of civil disobedience? It really depends on the righteousness of the cause. I think of Mahatma Gandhi trying to gain independence from Britain, and Martin Luther King trying to fight for civil rights. These people made a difference in the world. And yet, when you do acts of civil disobedience, you need to be prepared for the consequences that come. I think of another activist who tried to use civil disobedience to change the world. And this is Dr. Kevorkian. Dr. Kevorkian was an advocate for physician-assisted suicide. He invented a suicide machine, and he broke the law in order to assist people in committing suicide. he was eventually sent to prison for this. I think he expected an outpouring of support, but this support never really came. He was eventually let out, but only under the condition that he quit assisting in suicide. So two things come to mind. For one thing, the cause which you do civil disobedience for must be a righteous cause. The second thing is, if you do civil disobedience, you must be prepared to suffer the consequences. I ask myself, what causes would be righteous enough for civil disobedience? I think the rights of people. Obviously, civil rights is a good cause. Gay rights, the rights for women. But the second question, am I willing to suffer the consequences for civil disobedience? In my case, the answer is really no. The last thing I want to do is go to prison, and I don't think I'd be willing to take that chance. Does that make me a coward? Perhaps it does. I don't think God would hold me at fault for this. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So that's what I have for Ecclesiastes chapters 5 through 8. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Is there any thing in chapter 7 that you wish I would have covered? I ask you to like this video and click subscribe. I am the Progressive Disciple, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Thank you.